Welcome to Flying Blind on a Rocket Cycle, Customer-Centered Product Strategy for Machine Intelligence. This is part 4, titled Long-Term Outcomes. My name is Joe Lamantia, and I would love thoughts, comments, feedback, and perspective. So please find a way to say hello if something that you've seen here today strikes a chord with you. This is part of the extended case study that we're taking a look at on B2B product portfolio evolution for the analytics and machine intelligence space. And again, we're trying to do a couple of things here. Look at some customer-centered product strategies, see how they evolved and turned into a series of products, and touched on a couple of product portfolios. And then as a meta theme, consider and learn about establishing effective customer-centered product strategy capabilities and practices. So the focus today is long-term outcomes for machine intelligence. And as a recap, recall that we are looking at progressing forward from a starting business strategy, which is analytics products for emerging spaces. And so we're going to try to find a way to deliver on that business strategy. In this case, as we know from discussion of foundations, it's a series of investments or investment choices that you are making with product strategy. And then happens within the bookend or within the sandwich structure of the business view and business plan for analytics products for emerging spaces. So the role of product strategy is to chart a course for investment and evolution. And when you bring those together and you see things through the lens of wayfinding, which is the core archetype for product strategy, then there are a couple of key questions to answer. So why are you here and where are you going? And as we zoom in from that business view, which is analytics products for emerging spaces, we chose to focus on data scientists. And so the two specific jobs that the product strategy was doing, if you will, how it was helping us chart a course, was to understand deeply data scientists and then to inform and guide the investments by shaping the spirit of the product or the products that we would offer. And then that third key question, how will you get there? We addressed through a program of continuous learning and lean strategy. So a series of rapidly identified and explored, validated, verified, confirmed, or disconfirmed hypotheses. We learned overall a great deal from, for, about, through, and with data science and data scientists. And we distilled much of what we learned into a series of guiding tools for shaping and defining the products that we offered. Some of those, especially from that sense of opportunity assessment and product discovery, which is part of the overall product strategy cycle, were exploring and learning about the value chain for machine intelligence, and then looking at and understanding in depth and detail the product landscape that was part of or that manifests throughout that value chain. Our conclusion, if you will, or our chosen product strategy was to establish a series of new products and maybe new product categories that address the new roles that customers were performing that we had identified. And so we said essentially this amounts to a fundamentally new approach, and you can see how it's captured in some. That's part of the story aspect of product strategy. You can see how it's captured in some by suggesting there'll be intuitive, interactive visual interfaces. The key capabilities will be finding, exploration, discovery, and transformation for this data in this new emerging space of Hadoop. And then, of course, you can participate, communicate, and collaborate, take advantage of those enhancing capabilities for connecting what you find, right, and the outcomes of your efforts with the wider business. And then with the focus on machine intelligence and some of the emerging and new capabilities and technologies for machine intelligence that were then current, we built a whole host of what you would think of as machine intelligence abilities directly into the product and the product portfolio to support those key capabilities for customers. So the customer-centered view was we're enabling, allowing, or encouraging you to explore data, and we're using a whole host of machine intelligence features, functions, aspects, capabilities, and building blocks in order to do that. And then holistically or overall, we could capture in maybe one slide or in, I think this is, what is this, 7 words, Big data discovery, the visual face of Hadoop. And you can think of that as the most succinct statement of the product strategy itself. So with that laid out, we made a series of investments, because that is, of course, what product strategy does, chart the course for investment and evolution. And as a recap, we originated our first new product, which was the first release of that big data discovery visually focused product in about 14 months. So full cycle time from exploring and identifying and understanding the opportunity itself to product in market was about 14 months. You might be wondering, well, we've suggested that if you are customer centered as you work through the product strategy cycle, you'll see these clear benefits: clarity, speed, timing, momentum, and impact. And in our case, we actually, I think, were fortunate maybe to be or encounter recognition from other folks in the industry. So this is a quick grab of a press release from one of the companies that we'll see a little bit later on, and that we had previously identified briefly, Platfora, suggesting, well, congratulations, we're here in the same space. So let's see how this comes out. And I thought this was interesting at the time. Tech company marketing, of course, has its patterns. There are many defaults. But this seemed to be a notable example of suggesting there was parallel vision, right? And so the chosen strategy seemed to line up well. So then we extended that product, looking more closely to support a series of machine intelligence related features and functions and capabilities. So we spent about 6 months on a successive series of releases for some new key capabilities and continued that throughout the evolution path of the product. So cycle time is about 6 months for this first subsequent set of additional functionality and capability oriented around machine intelligence, in this case, feature selection specifically for folks in the machine learning space. And then as the next cycle, considering what next or what course to chart, excuse me, we spent about 12 weeks looking at and profiling and understanding what we would call a modeling offering. And that again is based on that extensive round of opportunity assessment and product discovery, working closely with customers. So after about 12 weeks, we'd outlined an offering and we decided that now was not the right moment to make an investment specifically. And we redirected our efforts at charting a what you would think of as a machine learning service or a collection of complementary machine learning service capabilities. And we were able to complete that cycle from the strategy view in just 4 weeks, even though in terms of actually making and following through on a complete cycle of product investment, so building, buying, launching, taking things to market, took a couple more years. All right, so I think overall, what you can see is that that strongly customer-centered approach gave us clarity and enabled us to make decisions. So chart a course, I think, with good speed. And then when you look at the wider lens of what was needed and necessary for the business or across the portfolio of business analytics products, you can see a series of decisions that match the timing, momentum, and impact to those broader concerns or those different horizons. So then how would all of this look, or how does all this look from the customer viewpoint? Because remember, the goal again is to be customer centered. So begin with customers and always be seeing and interpreting and analyzing and charting your course, crafting your decisions for investment through the lens of customers. In this case, I think that we were able to be strongly customer centered and actually specifically follow through on activity centered design. More broadly, if you look at and see how the self-described, right, audience and customer segmentation model for this collection of products, Analytics Clouds, works. So that top image there on the right side suggests here are the core audiences for these and what are the capabilities that they need. And you'll see a very close match to a lot of the capabilities that we identified initially in those efforts to get in the heads of data scientists and then drive the spirit of the product with product strategy. And then likewise, if you look down below on the right side, you'll see a specific set of capabilities and complementary collections of functionality, right, features, essentially, mapped out according to that activity cycle or that value chain that we had identified. So there's a good, steady alignment, and I think reflection or manifestation of what we found and discovered with the way that customers are understood, addressed, and supported going forward. So this is the sort of broad long-term view of who customers are, what they need, and how they work. Then from the perspective of the specific product, so that big data discovery product, you can see here we ran essentially 6 releases, and the time frame on this was incremental, right? So a series of incremental releases, and then eventually the product itself was folded into the larger construction of the Oracle Analytics Cloud. So you can see that the dynamic there is a series of releases and then essentially what you would think of as portfolio consolidation. And so those capabilities, those functions, those features, maybe even the code base, folded into and consolidated into the existing portfolio or the new go forward portfolio, which was a rebuilt stack on the cloud from the broader Oracle Analytics offerings. And I think when you see that happen, it clearly shines a light on the wayfinding aspects, right, of product strategy. And so looking at the way that that cycle actually works, you can see clearly that we had a designed course in mind for how the product and products would evolve. And actually, what you end up seeing is that a little bit the return voyage, right, is what comes to the fore. And that's the driver for that consolidation moment. And so, again, it's always a cycle. And the archetype of wayfinding, I think, is useful because you have to think about the full life and arc of the product and the products itself for those customers that you're identifying. So I think you can see that here when you look at the life cycle, which is this series of incremental releases and then consolidation, right? I think that speaks nicely to that portfolio viewpoint as a wayfinding destination. And then we had speculated, maybe is a good word, or we're trying to forecast the evolution path for the category. And one of the dynamics that we identified as potentially desirable was that new tools in the discovery, visual discovery, big data discovery segment, right, might actually eat or address or take over traditional BI market share, right, through the growth of capabilities and the evolution of how customers wanted and needed to be accessing and applying those different capabilities. And what we actually saw was that the same destination was reached. So that same set of customer-centered capabilities was in fact what the market chose to deliver, but the course specifically to get there was a little bit different. And so again, I think you can see where wayfinding emerged as a good analog or archetype for how product strategy plays out. So at the portfolio level, what that looks like is we identified a whole set of new capabilities with that core product, big data discovery, and then built that out through that series of incremental releases. And those become part of an expanded portfolio itself, right? When the tech shifts to and is delivered as the Oracle Analytics offering, right? That composite cloud offering. So again, the full cycle time on this was about 5 years. This is about 2014 to around 2019, 2020 or so. You can see the whole series of investments, right? The actual products and offerings taken to market there, changing in scope and time. So what about from the business strategy view? So we had suggested analytics products for emerging spaces. And one of the key decisions was to focus not just on the big data space, right, for data science, but actually to take a look at machine learning and machine intelligence more broadly. This actually is consistent with that business sandwich, if you will, right, where it's analytics products for not just one, but 2 or more potentially, but 2 definitely clearly visible here, emerging spaces. So then in terms of long-term outcome, what actually ends up happening is that you have a series of new products and an expanded portfolio that reflect that original business strategy of analytics for emerging spaces. And then you're addressing new customers, you're providing new capabilities. There were a whole series of technology evolutions that happened in a couple of different layers of the stack, if you will. And you can see all of this falling well into alignment with that broader business view of analytics products for emerging spaces. So new services, new products, new capabilities. All right, and then what about that broader view? So we identified a product landscape. And if you look within the business strategy view, what's the relationship of that product landscape to that original business strategy? Here again, where I think that press release from Platfora is interesting and notable. If you actually read this, there's a whole bunch of language in here. It's a little bit rich, I think, actually. Again, so tech company marketing has its ways. I think there's a whole set of key terms in here that speak really to that role of wayfinding, and they shine a light on how wayfinding actually plays the archetype of product strategy. And so you can see it's a secret project, it's the next generation, it's a dedicated offering. It's speaking, to the forward-looking vision of people who aren't following conventional wisdom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all of that actually is very consistent with the idea of telling a story about the product strategy that your business strategy sets in motion, right? And or will deliver on. So then what about the new category? So we had identified that there is a discovery workbench category with these key capabilities mapped out here. And we were actually using that customer-centered set of capabilities from the very beginning as the guiding light for how to define and shape this category. What are its boundaries? What's included? What happens in related categories and segments, et cetera. And so here, Platfora, we can see had what I would think of as a positive exit, if you will, using the common language. So Workday acquired Platfora for about 200 million. What then about the evolution of the category? So we had suggested what we see looking strongly with and from the customer viewpoint is that there'll be at least two waves of this, or maybe two waves of visual discovery and analysis tools, and they have this set of capabilities. They'll be growing from doing, data preparation and visualization into using machine learning, right? And if you look at how that actually played out, well, I think what you can see is that certainly in the case of Platfora, the category itself changed shape, and Platfora chose a strategy of expanding across that category. So they're looking at covering a broader range of those key customer capabilities. So you can see there the discovery cycle, including also the data cycle, right? And then in their own suggested vision, right? So the course that they were charting for themselves, you can see, discussion of acquiring machine learning capabilities to address that modeling cycle. So cycle time fully on Platfora, in this case, up to the Workday acquisition, about 5 years. All right, and then we had been looking at future opportunities or assessing the potential of new spaces and new parts of the landscape for opportunities. And so we were looking at automation and data pipelines. In preparing for this case study, going back and doing that long-term retrospective, looked at what happened to Datamir, which was another one of the products that we had identified and we're tracking on that broad spectrum product landscape. And here, what you can see is that in 2019, Datamir took an investment to pivot away from its roots in the Hadoop ecosystem, right? So moving from Hadoop as foundation technology, but actually keeping its strong focus on this particular set of customer needs and operations. So data transformation and automation, and combining some of those two areas that we had looked at, right? Data pipelines and automation, combining them together as the new focus vision or strategy for the Datamir product built on a new or evolved technology stack. So same customers, customer centered, but new tech. Cycle time again there was about 5 years. All right, so what about that set of new capabilities and some of those additional composite product categories that we had identified when we were doing our planning and looking at charting the evolution at the portfolio level. So we suggested, oh, well, there's machine learning services and addition to discovery workbenches, and then also discovering modeling platforms, maybe a good combination of those two sets of capabilities, right? So customers working across those two cycles. What happens there? Here, you may remember trifacta from our first readout of the competitive landscape. What you can see here is that in 2022, Alteryx, so a long established company in the business analytics space, acquired trifacta, and that was a $400 million deal. So it looks like that category itself was validated, right? If you think about that spread of capabilities, when trifacta joins Alteryx, cycle time on that was approximately 8 years. Okay, so then again, looking at the broad level of the machine intelligence value chain, what was the outcome, or are there any outcomes that we can see from that business strategy? So analytics products for emerging spaces, considering the machine intelligence value chain to be an emerging space, one that was not fully codified at the time and has grown, what actually has happened, or are there any outcomes that we can see as instructive? And I think the answer is yes. So folks who have looked at or been active in or tracked the space would know Databricks, coming out of Berkeley. So started by folks associated with Berkeley, a couple of other technology ventures. In aggregate, the funding, so the investment, is about 4 billion there. And fairly recently, in fact, Databricks was in the news as having scored, I think it's a $43 billion valuation following its most recent round of investment. So about 300 million in a round that includes NVIDIA amongst a series of other investors. So if you look at that wayfinding model and you think about the charts, the course that was charted for Databricks, you can see there's this product strategy, right? So your data, your AI, your future, right? They're working across the whole space of the machine intelligence value chain, offering analytics, and in business terms, what I would consider to be a fairly successful outcome. So using those criteria for evaluation, clarity, speed, timing, momentum, and impact, what do we see? Cycle time for Databricks, beginning with what you would think of as an initial investment. So in this case, Andreessen Horowitz, about 14 million. This is in 2011, 2012. I have to double check. You can see it identified in the press release there. You've got about 12 years. Okay, so I think altogether, what you can see is that in the long-term view, there was a whole series of what I would consider successful outcomes across that broad business strategy of analytics products for emerging spaces. I think customer-centered product strategy was clearly a mover or a guide, right, in charting the course of that evolution. And I would love to hear feedback and comments from folks along the way. So thank you for listening.